year, more than 2.5 million Americans end up in the emergency room because of car accidents. In Pennsylvania alone, car accidents injured more than 80,000 people last year and killed another 1,200. Injuries from auto accidents can have a catastrophic impact on the lives of accident victims and their families, from medical bills and lost wages to pain and suffering that can last for years. It really all adds up. And without the proper auto insurance, a car accident can leave you in financial peril, even if it wasn't your fault. So joining us today with some really helpful recommendations for basic coverage that all drivers should have on their policy is Anthony Georgelis from the Georgelis Injury Law Firm. So Tony, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So when we're talking auto insurance, we want obviously something affordable. No one likes to pay for insurance, but we also want to make sure it's protecting us. Is there really such a perfect balance, and are we finding it?
Well, I think a lot of people aren't.
Okay.
We all want to save money, but
Sure.
we don't want to do that at the expense of our long-term health or financial well-being. I see so many people who have been involved in catastrophic accidents and suffered devastating injuries who are in a really bad spot, all because they decided to save a few bucks instead of making sure they were adequately covered through their car insurance.
I think I have been one of those people. Thankfully not catastrophic, but. So let's talk about what you think the most important thing we should all have on our policy.
One of the first things or decisions that a driver is going to make when selecting an auto insurance policy is whether to be limited tort or full tort under the policy. Limited tort means that you can only seek compensation for economic or quantifiable losses.
Okay.
Those include out-of-pocket medical and other expenses or wage loss, things like that. If you're a full tort, however, you can seek compensation for both economic and non-economic losses. The most commonly known non-economic loss is pain and suffering, which really most times drives the value of the claim.
Are there any exceptions to this rule?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are.
Okay.
For instance, if a victim suffered what's called serious bodily injury, and that is a legal term defined by Pennsylvania case law. If the victim was a pedestrian or on a bicycle,
Okay.
If the victim was in a commercial vehicle, those are all limited tort exceptions. In terms of the at-fault driver, if the driver is convicted of DUI or accepted into the ARD program, if the driver is operating a vehicle that is registered outside of the state of Pennsylvania, or if the at-fault driver is uninsured, all of that qualifies as an exception.
Okay.
So even though these exceptions exist in breaching the threshold between limited and full tort, it's still a really big risk to have limited tort. So I highly recommend it's incredibly important for everybody to have full tort coverage.
In your experience, is it typically a lot more expensive for someone, or are we talking just a little?
It is more expensive.
Sure.
I think one of the benefits with all the competition with the insurance companies is that they want to give everybody the best rates. So
Sure.
my recommendation is to shop around and
Yeah.
ask for rates, what would the bump cost, and hopefully they can find something that makes financial sense for them.
I love it. All right, so what other coverages are optional but that we really should have as part of our auto insurance policies?
There are three main things that I would recommend.
Okay.
One is uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. And that is essentially if the at-fault driver does not have insurance or the at-fault driver does not have enough insurance to fairly and reasonably compensate you for your losses, then you can turn to your own policy for uninsurance or underinsured motorist coverage. I recommend that everybody have at least $100,000 in U coverage, which is what we call uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. But $100,000 is a reasonable threshold.
Okay, and then what else?
The couple other
Three things, so that's number one.
Yeah, a couple other things. One is the stacking. And stacking means that if you have multiple vehicles under your policy, you can add together the U coverages assigned to each vehicle. So for instance, if you have 3 vehicles that are insured and you have $50,000 of U coverage on each vehicle,
Right.
you would have access to a total of $150,000 in U coverage. If you don't have stacking, it's a lot different. You'd only have access to $50,000, so it's 3 times as much.
Okay.
The third thing is medical coverage. Everybody's obligated to have at least $5,000 in medical coverage through their auto policy.
Okay.
I recommend that if it's financially palatable to have at least $50,000. And the reason I say that is it can increase your ultimate recovery, because health insurance companies many times have a right to subrogate against your personal injury recovery. So if they've paid any medical expenses relating to the accident, they can get reimbursed out of your recovery. The more you have in medical coverage under your own auto policy reduces that risk and lowers the amount that they could seek reimbursement for.
These are things that I did not even know existed in an insurance policy, so thank you so much. If you or someone you know is ever involved in a motor vehicle accident or hurt on the job, call Georgelis first. They're right off of Rohrerstown Road in Lancaster. They can be reached at 1-800-HURT-NOW. We've also created a space on our website, FOX43.com, for you to reach out to them. All you have to do is go to the navigation at the top, click on mornings, and then click on Call Georgelis first. From there, it'll take you to a page where you can click on any of the law firm's practice areas to learn more, to ask them a question, or to request a free consultation. Tony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll see you next time.